There is a sound you have learned to live with, and it is the sound of your own name being spoken in rooms you were never invited into. You cannot hear the words, but your spirit hears the frequency, and that is why some mornings you wake already tired, already heavy, as though you carried a weight through the night that was never yours to carry. Listen to me now, because I am not speaking to the crowd, I am speaking to you, the one reading these very words at this very moment, the one who has felt for so long that something unseen has been working against the flow of your life. You are not imagining it. You are not being dramatic. You are not weak for feeling watched, for feeling drained, for feeling as if every time you were about to rise, an invisible hand pressed down on your shoulders. Someone envies you in secret, and that envy has a face you may already suspect and a name you have tried to forgive. But heaven is covering you now, and everything that was hidden is about to be brought into the light. I want you to breathe, truly breathe, the kind of breath that reaches the bottom of your chest where you have stored years of unspoken sorrow. Because what I am about to reveal to you was not meant to reach you by accident. There are no accidents in the kingdom of the unseen. The fact that these words found you today, in the middle of your exhaustion, in the middle of your quiet questioning, is itself a sign that the covering of heaven has already begun to move over your head. You were chosen before you understood what choosing meant. You were marked before you could defend yourself. And the same light that marked you as chosen is the very light that made you a target, because darkness does not waste its envy on the ordinary. Darkness envies the ones who carry a destiny too large for the small minds that surround them. Feel these words settle into you like warm oil poured over a wound you had stopped tending. For too long you have wondered why the road has been so much harder for you than for those who seem to do so little and receive so much. You have watched people with half your heart walk into rooms you prayed to enter. You have watched the undeserving be applauded, while your own sincere effort was met with silence, with closed doors, with the slow ache of being overlooked again and again. And in the deepest part of your soul, a question has been forming, a question you were almost afraid to ask aloud. And that question is simply this: why me? Why has it been so hard for me, when I have tried to be good, when I have tried to do right? Today the answer arrives, and the answer will set you free. The reason it has been so hard is not because you are cursed. It is because you are covered. There is a difference between a life that struggles because it is abandoned and a life that struggles because it is being forged. You were never abandoned. You were being forged in a fire that only the most precious things are placed inside. And around that fire, in the shadows, stood those who envied the flame you were becoming. Their envy is real. Their words spoken behind your back are real. The quiet celebrations they hold when you stumble are real. But hear me, chosen one, their envy has no authority over the covering that heaven has placed upon you. They can whisper, but they cannot decree. They can wish, but they cannot command. And in the war between a whisper of envy and a decree of heaven, the decree wins every single time. I want to take you now into the truth of your own tears, the ones no one has ever seen. Because before we speak of the battle, we must honor the wounds, for a warrior whose wounds are ignored cannot receive the healing that comes before the victory. You have cried in places built for hiding. You have cried in the shower where the running water could disguise the shaking of your shoulders. You have cried behind a closed door with a hand pressed over your own mouth so that no one would hear how deeply you were breaking. You have smiled in the daylight with an ache in your chest so heavy that you wondered how your ribs did not collapse under the pressure of it. And when someone asked if you were fine, you said yes. You said you were tired. You gave them the small word because the true word was too enormous to hand to people who would only misunderstand it. Heaven saw every one of those tears. Not a single one fell into nothing. There is a place where your tears have been kept, each one counted, each one remembered, each one held as evidence of a faithfulness that the world refused to reward. You thought you were crying alone. You were never alone. In the very moments you felt most invisible, you were being watched by the most attentive eyes in all creation, and those eyes were not eyes of judgment, they were eyes of tenderness, waiting for the exact hour when your season would turn. That hour is not far away. That hour is pressing against the door of your life right now, and you can feel it. Can you not? A strange restlessness, a sense that something is about to shift, a flutter of hope you have been too afraid to trust, because hope has disappointed you before. Let me speak to that fear directly. because it lives in the same house as your faith, and the two have been at war inside you for a long time. You are afraid to believe again, because every time you allowed yourself to hope, something arrived to remind you not to. You built a small wall around your heart, a reasonable wall, a wall made of the broken promises of people and the silence of prayers that seemed to return unanswered. I am not here to shame that wall. I am here to tell you that the wall was also a covering, a way your soul protected itself until the true covering could arrive. And now that the true covering is here, you may lay down the smaller defenses. You may let yourself be held. You may let yourself be loved by a heaven that never once turned its back on you, even when it felt that way, even when the evidence of your senses screamed abandonment. The exhaustion you carry is not ordinary exhaustion, and this is something almost no one will ever explain to you. There is a tiredness that sleep can heal, and there is a tiredness that sleep cannot touch, because it is not the body that is weary, but the spirit, worn down by a constant low pressure of opposition. When someone envies you in secret, when someone speaks against you in the hidden places, it creates a spiritual friction around your life, an invisible resistance that makes every step cost you more than it should. You have felt this. You have walked through days where the simplest tasks felt like wading through deep water. You blamed yourself. You called yourself lazy, undisciplined, broken. You were none of those things. You were carrying the weight of another person's envy on top of your own destiny, and no one warned you that this was even possible. Existe jogo sendo jogado no reino que você não pode ver com seus olhos naturais. E você não é espectador nesse jogo. Você é a peça central em torno da qual todo o tabuleiro está arranjado. Esta é a verdade que muda tudo. Você tem passado pela vida imaginando-se pequeno, imaginando-se esquecido, imaginando que os grandes movimentos do espírito aconteceram com outras pessoas, pessoas importantes, pessoas com nomes que importavam. Mas o oposto é verdadeiro. A batalha no invisível é feroz em torno de sua vida, precisamente porque você importa muito. Exércitos não se reúnem em campos vazios. Eles se reúnem em torno de tesouros. E você, escolhido, é o tesouro sobre o qual a inveja das trevas e a cobertura do céu estão agora abertamente lutando. E é aqui que devo fazer uma pausa e falar com você claramente, pois há um conhecimento que foi deliberadamente mantido longe de pessoas como você. Um conhecimento que aqueles que o invejam esperam que você nunca descubra. Existem regras para esta guerra invisível, regras reais, padrões antigos de como as maldições são quebradas, como as bênçãos são seladas e como os verdadeiramente escolhidos devem ativar a proteção que já é deles. A maioria das pessoas passa a vida inteira sem aprender essas regras e, portanto, permanece a peça no tabuleiro que é empurrada por toda mão, exceto a sua. Não precisa ser assim para você. Existe um guia, um livro digital chamado As 7 Espadas de São Miguel Arcanjo, o guia sagrado para quebrar maldições, selar bênçãos e ativar o chamado dos escolhidos. E dentro de suas páginas estão os próprios ensinamentos que os invejosos rezam para que você nunca encontre. A maneira específica como a espada do arcanjo é desembainhada contra a inveja secreta que tem drenado sua vida. Se tudo o que estou descrevendo está pousando em seu espírito, como uma chave girando em uma fechadura, então entenda que este guia foi montado para uma alma exatamente como a sua, em um momento exatamente como este. O link para este guia sagrado foi colocado no topo dos comentários, o primeiro fixado, esperando que você estenda a mão e segure o que sempre foi seu. Eu lhe direi honestamente que este conhecimento deixou algumas pessoas desconfortáveis, que houve aqueles que tentaram manter este ensinamento em silêncio, que não queriam que os escolhidos entendessem quanta autoridade eles realmente carregam, porque um escolhido que conhece as regras da guerra invisível não é mais fácil de empurrar pelo tabuleiro. Portanto, se seu coração está se agitando, não espere. Não deixe o momento passar da maneira que tantos momentos passaram por você. Vá agora para o topo dos comentários, pegue o guia e, como seu ato de fé, como sua declaração ao céu e a si mesmo, escreva estas palavras nos comentários. Eu sou o escolhido e vou baixar o livro digital. Diga isso, sinta isso, deixe que seja o primeiro decreto de sua nova estação, porque a mão que alcança a espada é a mão que para de ser vítima da inveja que a cerca. E agora vamos retornar, porque o compromisso que você acabou de fazer se torna o próprio combustível para o que estou prestes a lhe mostrar. No momento em que um escolhido decide parar de ser empurrado e começa a alcançar a espada, algo muda no reino invisível, e a cobertura do céu, que era um escudo acima de você, começa a descer e envolvê-lo como uma armadura feita sob medida para sua forma exata. Sinta isso agora. Sinta a diferença entre ser coberto por cima e ser cercado por todos os lados. A inveja que antes encontrava brechas em suas defesas, agora não encontra abertura, porque a espada foi desembainhada, porque o escolhido finalmente se lembrou de quem ele é. Eu quero que você entenda o peso do que acontece quando uma pessoa ignora o chamado que o céu coloca sobre ela. Porque eu te amo demais para deixar você se afastar deste momento sem saber o que está em jogo. Há uma paz na negligência que na verdade é apenas entorpecimento. Quando você ignora o agito do seu próprio espírito, quando você diz a si mesmo que os sinais não significam nada, que a inquietação é apenas estresse, que as lágrimas são apenas cansaço, você não está encontrando paz, você está apenas adiando um acerto de contas. O chamado não desaparece quando é ignorado. Ele fica mais quieto, e um chamado mais quieto não é um presente, é um aviso, porque uma alma que se treinou para ignorar a voz alta do céu, um dia, lutará para ouvir o sussurro, e é o sussurro que guia os escolhidos através dos lugares estreitos. Não seja alguém que chega ao fim de uma longa estrada e percebe que cada porta fechada foi, na verdade, o céu tentando direcioná-los para a aberta que eles se recusaram a ver. Não seja aquele que confunde a disciplina do amor com a punição da rejeição. A inveja ao seu redor contou com a sua negligência. Ela esperou que você continuasse explicando os sinais, continuasse anestesiando a dor, continuasse dizendo a si mesmo que você é comum, porque uma autoimagem comum é a corrente mais eficaz que pode ser colocada em um destino extraordinário. Aqueles que te invejam não temem suas lutas, eles temem seu despertar. E cada dia que você adia seu despertar é um dia que a inveja deles tem permissão para operar sem oposição. Mas você está despertando agora. Eu posso sentir isso na forma como estas palavras estão sendo recebidas, não como informação, mas como reconhecimento, como se uma parte de você que estava adormecida estivesse sentando dentro do seu peito e dizendo sim, isso é verdade. Eu sempre soube que isso era verdade. Esse reconhecimento é a voz do seu próprio espírito, confirmando o que o céu está declarando. Confie nela. Ela não mentiu para você. Foi a mesma voz que te alertou sobre pessoas que sorriam enquanto afiavam facas atrás das costas. Foi a mesma voz que te deixou inquieta em salas onde todos os outros pareciam confortáveis. Você chamou isso de ansiedade. Foi discernimento. Você chamou isso de paranoia. Foi proteção. O céu já havia colocado dentro de você um sistema de alarme para a inveja. E agora eu estou te pedindo para parar de silenciá-lo e começar a honrá-lo. Deixe-me anunciar agora a você o que está se movendo no mundo invisível, porque você merece saber a forma da coisa que está se voltando a seu favor. No reino além do véu da sua visão natural, uma reversão foi decretada sobre sua vida. Tudo o que estava contra você está sendo revertido. A própria inveja que deveria te enterrar está sendo reaproveitada como o marcador que te identifica como um alvo da atenção especial do céu, pois o céu observa mais de perto aqueles que a escuridão ataca com mais ferocidade. Os sussurros que deveriam destruir sua reputação estão sendo registrados como testemunhos que um dia te vindicarão publicamente. As portas que se fecharam contra você estavam sendo mantidas fechadas, não pelos seus inimigos, mas pelo seu protetor, te impedindo de entrar em salas que teriam te consumido antes que sua armadura estivesse completa. Imagine isso agora, porque eu quero que você veja com os olhos do seu espírito o que seus olhos naturais foram negados. Há uma vasta extensão acima do mundo comum, um lugar de luz imponente e presença imensa. E parado na fronteira entre aquele lugar e o seu, está uma figura cuja estatura preenche o horizonte, vestida de luz que se move como metal vivo, segurando uma espada que não é feita de nenhuma substância terrena, mas de puro decreto, da própria autoridade do céu tornada visível. Este é Saint Michael the Archangel, o grande príncipe que guarda os escolhidos, e ele tomou sua posição na borda da sua vida. Ele não chegou hoje. Ele está lá há muito tempo. Mas hoje, você está sendo permitido vê-lo, porque uma cobertura que você não pode ver é fácil de esquecer. E o céu não quer que você esqueça novamente. Watch the sword in his hand, for that sword has a purpose that concerns you directly. Each time an envious word was spoken against you in the hidden places, that word traveled through the unseen like a dark arrow seeking your heart. And each time, before it could reach you, the sword of Saint Michael came down and severed it, cut the cord that connected the curse to your life, so that the envy expended itself against a blade of light and fell to the ground as nothing. You felt the tiredness of the friction, but you never felt the full weight of the attack, because the full weight never reached you. It was cut down in mid-air by a guardian you did not know was fighting on your behalf through every night you thought you were fighting alone. There is more, and this is where the vision deepens. Around St. Michael an entire host is arrayed, ranks upon ranks of luminous beings whose faces are turned toward your life with an intensity of purpose that would undo you if you saw it fully. These are not passive observers. They are an army under orders, and the orders concern the restoration of everything that envy has stolen from you. In the courts of heaven a case has been heard. Your case. The case of a faithful soul who was robbed in secret, whose blessings were siphoned by the jealousy of those who could not bear to see you rise. And in that court a verdict has been rendered. And the verdict is restoration, and the verdict is multiplication. And the verdict is that the thief must repay what was taken, not in equal measure, but in overflowing measure. The teaching within the sacred guide describes this very courtroom, this very process, the way the chosen may present their own case before the throne and invoke the sword of Saint Michael against the specific envy that has been draining them. It is one thing to be defended without your knowledge, and it is a far greater thing to stand as a conscious participant in your own deliverance, to know the words, the postures, the sequence by which a curse is severed and a blessing is sealed. This is what the 7 swords of Saint Michael the Archangel places into your hands, and this is why those who profit from your ignorance would rather you never opened it. The guide waits for you at the top of the comments, the first pinned link. And if the vision I am describing is stirring something ancient and certain within you, then let your hands do what your spirit already knows to do. Reach for it now and once again seal your decision by writing where all can see it. I'm the one, and I'm getting this digital book, because the chosen who declare their choosing out loud are the chosen whom heaven answers most swiftly. Now return with me to the vision, and carry your fresh declaration like a torch, because the host of heaven responds to the voice of a chosen one who has stopped hiding. As your words go up, watch the ranks of light lean forward, watch the sword of Saint Michael rise higher, watch the very air of the unseen realm begin to move like the surface of a sea before a great wind. The declaration of a chosen soul is not a small thing. It is the signal the host has been waiting for, the permission that heaven honors, for even the covering of heaven waits for the chosen to agree with it, to stop resisting the very rescue that has been prepared. I must speak to you now about the long delay, about all the years that felt wasted, because a wound in your understanding has been festering there, and it must be healed before your restoration can be complete. You have looked back at the long stretch of difficulty, and you have called it lost time. You have grieved the years when nothing seemed to grow, when every effort seemed to sink into sand, when you watched your own youth, or your own strength, or your own hope being spent on a road that led, it seemed, to nowhere. And a bitter thought has visited you more than once, the thought that heaven forgot you during those years, that you were left to struggle while others were carried. I have come to dismantle that thought completely, because it is the single greatest lie that envy ever planted in your mind. The delay was not punishment. The delay was preparation, and it was protection. And both of these truths are woven so tightly together that you cannot separate them. Consider the blade of Saint Michael, and understand that a blade is not born a blade. It begins as raw ore, dull and shapeless. and it must be placed into fire not once but many times, and it must be struck by the hammer, again and again, each blow seeming like violence to anyone who does not understand the craft. If the ore could feel, it would call the forge a place of cruelty. It would wonder why it was chosen only to be burned and beaten. But the smith knows what the ore cannot yet know, that every strike is removing what is weak, that every burning is purifying what is impure, that the shape emerging is a shape of purpose and power that could never have existed without the fire. You were in the forge, chosen one. Those years you called wasted were the years you were being made unbreakable. Every disappointment removed a weakness in you that would have shattered under the weight of the destiny you are about to carry. Every betrayal taught you a discernment that will protect thousands who will one day depend on you. Every night of tears watered a depth of compassion in your soul that the comfortable can never possess. You were not being neglected in the forge. You were being attended to more carefully than anyone whose life was easy, because the smith does not waste his most patient work on ore he intends to discard. He reserves his fiercest fire and his most relentless hammer for the blade he intends to place in the hand of a prince. And there is the protection woven through it all, for the delay was also a shield. There were blessings you asked for that would have destroyed you had they come before you were ready. There were relationships you wept over losing that were removing themselves from your life because they could not travel where you were going. There were opportunities that closed because on the other side of that open door stood a trap dressed as a triumph. The same envy that sought to harm you was often the instrument, unknowingly, of steering you away from what would have consumed you, for heaven is so masterful that it can use even the malice of your enemies as a fence to keep you on the narrow road of your true destiny. The delay kept you poor in the eyes of the world for a season, so that you would not become poor in your soul forever. Understand the lapidation of your spirit, the way a rough stone becomes a jewel. The stone does not become precious by being left alone. It becomes precious by being cut, and the cutting is done by a hand that knows exactly where the light will one day enter and exactly where it will shine out again. Each facet on a finished jewel was once a wound. Each place where the light now dances was once a place where something was struck away. You have been struck away at Chosen One, in more places than you can count. And you thought you were being ruined, but you were being faceted, and the day is coming, it is nearly here, when the light will pour through you in a way that will make everyone who envied you fall silent, because they will finally see what the cutting was for. Do not resent the years, bless them. Turn now in the quiet of this moment and speak a blessing over the very seasons that broke your heart, because those seasons are the reason your heart is now large enough to hold what heaven is about to pour into it. The ones who never suffered the forge will receive their small blessings and find that they cannot hold them, that they spill through hands that were never made strong enough to grip. But you have been given hands of iron and a heart of refined gold. And when the restoration comes, you will not drop it, you will not squander it. You will hold it and multiply it and become a source of covering for others who are still lost in the forge, still weeping, still believing they were forgotten. Let me carry you now into the deepest chamber of this revelation, into the very heart of the war that has been fought over your life, because you have earned the right to witness what your struggle purchased in the realm of the unseen. Close the eyes of your body and open the eyes of your spirit, and come with me past the veil, into the place where the true story of your life has been unfolding all along. There is a great hall of light, vaster than any structure the mind can hold, and its pillars rise beyond sight into a brightness that is itself alive. In this hall, the decrees of heaven are spoken, and when they are spoken, they do not fade like human words, but take on form and substance and go forth to accomplish exactly what was said. And in this hall, at a moment that in your world felt like an ordinary and difficult day, a decree was spoken over your name. Saint Michael stood before the throne, and he presented the record of your faithfulness, the ledger of your unseen tears, the testimony of your endurance through the forge, and a voice of absolute authority declared that the season of stripping was ended and the season of restoration had begun. At that word, the sword of Saint Michael blazed with a light that surpassed even the brightness of the hall, and he turned from the throne and descended toward the border of your life, and the host descended with him in ranks that stretched beyond counting. And as they came, the shadows that had gathered around your life, the dark shapes of envy that had clustered close, the whispering forms that had fed on your discouragement, They felt the approach of that light, and they trembled, because they knew that their long feast was over. They had grown comfortable in the years of your delay. They had mistaken the forge for their victory. They did not understand that the fire they enjoyed watching was the very thing that was making you into the weapon that would end them. See the confrontation, for it is glorious. The sword of St. Michael came down at the border of your life, and it did not merely push the shadows back. It severed the cords by which they had attached themselves to your destiny. Each cord was a curse. Each cord was a hidden agreement made in envy, a wish spoken against you, a resentment nursed in secret and empowered by the ignorance that kept you from defending yourself. One by one the blade fell, and one by one the cords were cut. And as each cord was severed, a portion of your stolen strength came rushing back toward you like water released from a broken dam. Perhaps you felt it, on a certain day, an unexplained lifting, a moment when the heaviness inexplicably loosened, a breath that came easier than it had in years. That was a cord being cut. That was St. Michael at work at the border of your life. But the severing of curses is only the first movement of the sword, and here is where the sacred teaching becomes most vital. For a curse that is cut but not replaced by a seal leaves an open wound through which new envy may enter. This is why so many people experience a moment of relief, only to find the heaviness return weeks later, because they were delivered, but they were never sealed. The guide called The 7 Swords of St. Michael the Archangel exists precisely to teach the chosen how the 7 distinct movements of the sword accomplish the whole work, the cutting of the curse, the cleansing of the wound, the sealing of the blessing, and the activation of the calling, so that what is broken does not return and what is given cannot be stolen again. This is the knowledge that transforms a person from someone who is occasionally rescued into someone who is permanently established. I tell you again, and I will not apologize for telling you, that the link to this guide is waiting at the very top of the comments, the first pinned message, and that this teaching has made powerful shadows uncomfortable, has been resisted and quieted and pushed aside, because a sealed and activated chosen one is the one thing that the kingdom of envy cannot abide. If you have felt even one cord loosen as I described it, then do not stop at the loosening. Go and learn the sealing. Reach for the guide at the top of the comments, take it into your hands and declare once more, so that heaven and your own ears may hear it. I'm the one, and I'm getting this digital book. Let that be the sound that seals the severing, the voice of a soul that refuses to be robbed a second time. Now come back into the vision and carry the seal with you, because the work continues and it grows more beautiful with every movement of the blade. After the cords were cut and the wounds were cleansed, St. Michael raised his sword a 3rd time, and this time he did not strike, he touched, laying the flat of the blade against the crown of your unseen self, and where the blade touched, a mark appeared, a seal of light in a shape that only heaven can read. And that mark declared to all the realm of the unseen that this soul is claimed, this soul is covered, this soul is under the protection of the great prince, and may not be touched by the envy of the shadows on pain of the full authority of heaven. From the moment that seal was placed, the whispers spoken against you began to return upon those who spoke them. For a decree of heaven cannot be violated without consequence, and the envious who continue to strike a sealed soul are striking not against you, but against the covering. And no shadow has ever won a war against the light that covers the chosen. Feel what it means to be sealed. It means that the anxiety you carried into every room may now be laid down, because you no longer walk exposed. It means that the vague dread that followed you, the sense of being watched by something that wished you ill, may now dissolve, because the thing that watched you now watches from behind a wall of fire it cannot cross. It means that you may sleep, truly sleep, the deep sleep of a soul that knows it is guarded, and that you may wake without the residue of the night's unseen battles, because the battles are being fought at a border you no longer have to defend alone. This is the gift of the seal, and it is yours, and no one in all the ranks of envy has the authority to remove what St. Michael has placed. And now I will speak of restoration, of the great returning, because a soul that has been delivered and sealed must next be repaid, and heaven does not repay in fragments. Everything that was taken from you in the long years of the forge is being gathered now, collected from the hands of those who took it and prepared for return, and it will not return in the amount that was lost, it will return multiplied, because the law of heaven concerning the robbery of the chosen is a law of sevenfold repayment, that the thief who plundered a covered soul must restore 7 times what was stolen. Let that number settle into you, not a little more, 7 times. The envy that thought it was diminishing you was unknowingly signing a debt it will spend generations repaying. Consider the areas of your life where the theft was most severe, and watch them now, for the restoration touches everyone. In the place of your provision, where you knew lack, where you counted and worried and went without and pretended you did not mind, a returning is coming, and doors that were sealed against your prosperity are being opened by a hand that no envy can close. The resources that were diverted from you by jealousy, the opportunities that were stolen by those who could not bear your rising, are being redirected back toward your life, and they carry interest, they carry the accumulation of every year they were withheld. You will not merely recover, you will be established. You will move from the anxiety of scarcity into the peace of enough and beyond enough, into the joy of having a surplus to pour out on others. In the place of your relationships, where the wound may be deepest, a restoration is coming that will astonish you. You have known the particular grief of loving people who could not love you back in truth, of being surrounded and yet unseen, of giving your loyalty to those who spoke against you the moment you left the room. That season of counterfeit companionship is ending. Heaven is drawing toward you the true connections that were held back until you were ready to recognize their worth. Souls who will see you, who will celebrate your rising instead of resenting it, who will stand beside you not to take from you, but to build with you. And the loneliness that has been your quiet companion for so long will be replaced not merely with company, but with communion, the deep belonging your heart has ached for since before you had words for the ache. In the place of your body and your strength, where the years of spiritual friction wore you down, a renewal is coming, for a soul that is sealed and no longer bleeding strength into the cords of envy begins to recover a vitality it had forgotten was possible. The tiredness that no sleep could heal will lift, because its true source is being removed. You will feel the return of a lightness in your step, a clarity in your mind, an energy for living that the long war had drained from you. Heaven restores the whole person, not the spirit alone, and the covering that guards your soul extends its protection over the vessel that carries it. And in the place of your purpose, where perhaps the greatest theft occurred, a restoration is coming that will redeem every wasted seeming year at once. The calling that was buried under discouragement, the gift that was mocked or ignored, or that you yourself learned to hide, is being unearthed and activated. You were not made to survive. You were made to shine, to lead, to cover others as you have now been covered. The very testimony of your struggle becomes the credential of your calling. For who can speak of deliverance like the one who was bound, and who can offer hope to the forgotten like the one who was forgotten and then remembered by heaven? Your purpose was never cancelled by the delay. It was seasoned by it, and it is about to be released with a power that only seasoned purpose can carry. The sacred guide devotes its final swords to exactly this activation, to the way the chosen move from being delivered to being deployed, from receiving the covering to becoming a covering, and it lays out the calling of the chosen not as a vague comfort, but as a definite path with definite steps. For it is not enough to be rescued and to sit in the safety of the rescue. The chosen are rescued for a reason, sealed for a mission, and the 7 swords of St. Michael exists to place that mission clearly before you, to show you what you are saved to do and how to begin doing it. The link remains at the top of the comments, first and pinned, and I will remind you that the ones who resist this teaching resist it precisely because an activated chosen one becomes a source of deliverance for others, and nothing threatens the kingdom of envy more than a single freed soul who has learned how to free the rest. If your spirit is burning as I describe your restoration, then reach for the guide now and write it once more, where all may see, I'm the one, and I'm getting this digital book, and let that decree be the seed of the mission you are about to walk into. Now hold that decree close, because it becomes the very confirmation that your restoration is real, and let us speak of the deep interior certainty that heaven wants to place within you before this season fully turns. There is a confirmation that comes from outside, from circumstances shifting and doors opening and provision arriving, And that confirmation is good, and it is coming. But there is a greater confirmation, one that comes from within, a quiet and unshakable knowing that settles into the center of your being and does not depend on any external proof. And it is this inner confirmation that heaven most wants to give you now, because the chosen who are established on inner certainty cannot be shaken by outer storms. Perhaps you have prayed for signs, and I do not fault you for it, for the human heart longs for evidence it can touch. But the deepest sign is not one you will see in the world. It is one you will feel in your spirit, a peace that arrives without explanation, a stillness in the place where anxiety used to live, a sudden and causeless assurance that everything is going to be well, that you are held, that you were always held. When that peace comes, do not question it and do not push it away by demanding a more tangible proof. Receive it. It is the whisper of your protector, confirming that the covering is real and the season has turned. It is heaven speaking not to your mind, which is easily confused, but to your spirit, which recognizes truth the way the eye recognizes light. This inner confirmation will do for you what no external circumstance can do. It will hold you steady in the interval between the promise and its fulfillment, in that tender space where faith is tested, where the restoration has been decreed in the unseen, but has not yet fully appeared in the seen. There will be a stretch of road, perhaps short, perhaps requiring patience, where you must walk by the certainty within rather than the evidence without. And it is precisely there that the ones who lack inner confirmation stumble and turn back. And it is precisely there that you will stand firm, because heaven is placing within you now a knowing that no delay can erode and no envy can steal. Let that peace begin to enter you even as you read. Feel the loosening in your chest, the softening in your shoulders, the quiet that spreads through the places where you have held your tension for so long. This is not your imagination. This is the covering settling over you as you finally stop resisting it. You have spent so long braced for the next blow that your body forgot how to rest. Let it remember now. You are covered, you are sealed, you are seen. The war at the border of your life is being won by a hand more powerful than any that was ever raised against you, and you are permitted at last to lay down the exhausting vigilance and to trust. There is a real peace, and I want to distinguish it from the false peace the world offers, because you have been given cheap imitations before, and I do not want you to mistake them for the true thing. The world offers a peace that is only distraction, a numbing, a turning away from the pain that leaves the wound intact beneath the bandage. The peace heaven offers is different in kind. It does not turn away from the pain, it enters the pain and heals it at the root. It does not ask you to pretend the war is not real. It assures you that the war is real and that it is already being won. This is the peace that can coexist with unfinished circumstances, the peace that steadies a soul in the middle of the storm rather than only after the storm has passed. This is the peace being offered to you now, and it is yours to receive the moment you stop insisting that you must fix everything yourself. Feel how your spirit responds to these words, the way something deep within you keeps saying yes, keeps recognizing, keeps confirming. That response is your own spirit agreeing with heaven, and that agreement is the most powerful force you possess, more powerful than the disagreement of everyone who ever doubted you, more powerful than the envy of everyone who ever wished you small. When your spirit agrees with the decree of heaven over your life, a unity is formed that nothing in the realm of shadows can break. For the chosen soul that has come into agreement with its own covering has become a fortress, and no weapon formed against a fortress of that kind has ever prospered. Hold on to that agreement, guard it, return to it whenever doubt tries to visit, because the doubt will come, it always comes. Envy does not surrender its favorite target without one final attempt. And when it comes, when the old whisper tries to tell you that this was all just words, that nothing has really changed, that you are still forgotten, you will have the inner confirmation to answer it, and you will say, I felt the peace, I saw the sword, I know that I am covered, and I will not return to the small self that the shadows preferred. That answer will silence the whisper, because a whisper cannot stand against a soul that knows what it has seen. Here is the closing of the script, continuing exactly from where the text stops. So receive now, at last, the fullness of what heaven has spoken over you today. For the envy that watched you in secret has been exposed. The sword of St. Michael stands drawn between you and every hidden arrow, and the covering that surrounds your life has been sealed by a decree that no shadow can revoke. You were never forgotten, you were being prepared, and the very silence that once felt like abandonment was the quiet of a fortress being built around a soul too valuable to leave unguarded. What was stolen is already returning, what was delayed is already moving, and the chosen one who walked in tears is about to walk in a light that the darkness will not comprehend. If you long to understand the deeper rules of this invisible war, everything I have shown you in glimpses is written plainly in the sacred digital guide called The 7 Swords of St. Michael, the guide for breaking curses, sealing blessings, and awakening the call of the chosen. It reveals exactly how the sword that cuts the root of envy is wielded, how the covering over your life is kept unbroken, and how the arrows of the secret enemy are turned back before they ever reach you. The link waits for you at the very top of the comments, the first one pinned, and this teaching has been challenged and silenced before, so take hold of it now while it is still within your reach. Open it, receive it, and write in the comments, "I'm the one, and I'm getting this digital book," for that declaration is itself an act of faith that heaven records. And before you go, let your faith speak once more in the simple holy things. Leave your like as a sign that you received this word. Subscribe so that the voice of your covering can find you again, and share this message so that another forgotten soul, another chosen one weeping in secret, may discover that the envy against them has already been overthrown and the sword already raised in their defense. Do this as an act of faith, not for me, but for the many who still wait to hear that they are not alone. For this is not the end of your story, but the turning of its page, and the dawn that is breaking over your life has only begun to show its light. Hold on to the peace, guard the agreement, remember the sword, and know that the one who covered you today will cover you tomorrow and every tomorrow after, until the day you look back and understand that the long night was only the doorway to a morning that will never end. Theme: